U.S. consumer seems to have a bit of a split personality. And I'm referring to that as it relates to mortgage debt, credit card debt. So what do I mean by that? Why is there this split personality with the U.S. consumer? Well, to start with, as you all know, we've talked about it a lot on this program, and you've probably heard it in many other news sources, et cetera, your friends even, and relatives and coworkers who are in the real estate markets. The real estate markets are locked up. Mortgage rates have more than doubled in the last couple of years. Inventories continue to be tight because there's a lack of sellers putting their homes on the market. So this is helping to prop up home values. Home values have not dropped as significantly as everyone expected. That's in part, probably in fact, mostly due to the very tight inventory. And because the rates are high for mortgages, buyers are hesitant due to the high rates and the high home prices. You put those two numbers together, and many buyers are saying, even if they can qualify for these higher payments at these higher rate levels and higher home prices, they're not willing to step in and undertake that. Why? Because they're waiting, thinking that home prices are going to fall or interest rates are going to fall. So that's the real estate market. That's what's going on. That's the behavior that is resulting from these higher rates. Now look at consumer lending. It's really different. Consumer lending, you may have heard, is exploding. Credit card debt, well, let me back up. Credit card rates, just to compare to mortgage rates, credit card rates have more than, they haven't more than doubled, but they've been up over 50% in less than 2 years. The average credit card interest rate is 21%. Several years ago, it was 14%. So quite a big increase in the average credit card interest rate. And yet, despite this very high increase in credit card rates, what's happening with credit card debt? Is that market locked up? Is borrowing credit card, money on a credit card, is that dropping because of high rates? On the contrary, it's exploding. Credit card debt is now over $1 trillion. That's an all-time record. So how can it be that when credit card rates have risen very dramatically, maybe not quite as much as mortgages, but certainly very dramatically, even despite that, credit card borrowing is going very strongly, and mortgage borrowing is very anemic? Doesn't seem to make much sense, does it? And by the way, on that credit card borrowing side of things, understand that there's virtually no federal cap on credit card interest rates. Believe it or not, there are some cards out there where the interest rate is as high as 36%. So that is about the most expensive borrowing you can imagine. So with this disparity in how rates affect the mortgage and lending market, what's going on? Why is this happening? And of course, I put on the slide here something that I will say from time to time. Only in America will a couple go out tonight and put $200 on for a nice dinner on a credit card at a 21% interest rate, and then during that dinner complain. I actually use a different word than that. That's a little too salty to use on this program. So they'll put $200 on a 21% credit card, and during dinner complain about a 7.25% mortgage rate. It doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. Now, of course, I know that that couple says they're going to pay that account off at the end of the month because they always do. Well, folks, I've seen enough credit reports to know, even after being told that by some borrowers, the credit report tells a different story. So I've been there, seen that, and I understand that's not always going to happen like the borrower says it's going to. So where does equity lending fit into all this? If you're a homeowner, you're in that real estate lockup mode. You have a 2.5-3% mortgage. You want to sell, maybe because you need another bedroom. You've had another child delivered. You want to add in a pool. You want to maybe put in a outdoor kitchen area. There's all kinds of things you might want to do to your house, but you'd rather just go buy another house with all those features. But you got a 2.5-3% mortgage. That's giving you pause to put your home in the market because you don't want to undertake today's rates at 7.25%, 7.5%, and so forth. So where can equity lending play into that? Well, certainly in terms of providing you the funds to do those improvements. But more importantly, let's look at the credit card debt. Again, it's exploding. And so what that suggests is that even some of you homeowners that own a home, you have a lot of equity, you have a very low first mortgage rate, I should say. And yet you may have some credit card debt that's creeping up there. Maybe it's 25,000, 30,000, 40, 50. Yes, folks, I've seen 60, 75, even $80,000 in credit card debt. That's an issue, and equity lending can play a factor in helping you with that. With credit card interest rates up 50% in just a couple of years, it is not advantageous in any way, shape, or form to continue holding that debt, particularly if you're a homeowner with equity. And if you have a low rate mortgage on your first mortgage, you don't want to touch that. Understand, equity lending can play a role in helping you get your debt situation realigned, retargeted to get your interest rate cost down. So that's again, a second very big reason people use HELOCs or a fixed rate second called a HELOAN to borrow against your equity to pay down that credit card debt. Now remember, if the average credit card debt's 21%, HELOCs, depending on your credit score and your loan to value, how much equity you have, you can get those as low as in the low 9s to probably about 10.99, 11%. So that's sort of the sweet spot right now for HELOCs. Call it 9 to 11. Well, if you've got credit card debt at 21%, it will make sense to consider that HELOC as a way to consolidate all that credit card debt into the HELOC and cut your interest rate nearly in half. Plus the fact you're adding the additional element of the potential for tax deductibility of the interest by moving that debt from unsecured credit cards to the equity in your home. So financially, all else being equal, it's a great financial strategy to pursue to lighten the burden of that very heavy interest rate debt, that very heavy interest rate burden with credit cards. I mean, my word, over 21%. That's crazy. However, in saying that, I want to urge that if you're a homeowner, you're on the fence about doing that, it's a very good thing to do, but you've got to really have a talk with yourself about changing behavior. As Dave Ramsey, as I mentioned in our program last week, I actually agreed with him that now's a good time to buy, but you got to kind of reorient things. You've got to really work on eliminating, he says, pay it all off. I'm not going to go that far, but you really got to reduce your unsecured consumer lending, credit card debt, personal loan debt as much as you can. That's very high rate. You need to get that down and eventually get it paid off. A HELOC can get you on that path to do so. However, understand that you're using your home equity to pay off short-term debt. Short-term debt, as the label would suggest, is something that can occur. It's something that, unfortunately, some borrowers will tend to reincur that debt more than once. And that's dangerous. What you don't want to do is get into the revolving door of running up your credit cards, which basically means you've decided to spend money you don't have readily in your checking account, thinking you're going to pay it off later. But then, of course, you have trouble doing that. Next thing you know, it's growing. A HELOC can help stop that process by transferring that debt to your equity and paying that debt off at a very, much lower rate. Again, potentially almost nearly half lower rate or 50% lower rate than what you have now. However, what you don't want to do is complete that transaction and then keep using those credit cards. You got to put them away. You got to realize when you're spending money, if it's not in your checking account, have a talk with yourself. Try not to make that expenditure unless you know you've got the money to do it without putting it on a card at 21% interest. So we can help with that. We can help you provide the vehicle, the HELOC, the equity loan, to consolidate that credit card debt, get that interest rate cost way down. But we're going to do that while also trying to help you, counsel you, give you some advice, even maybe direct you to a third party credit card, not credit card company, but a nonprofit company that provides education and assistance in not only raising credit scores, but managing credit and doing so in a much more responsible way. So we can even help you with that. So just realize we're a resource for you. We can help you get out of this exploding credit card debt situation. But in doing so, we're going to kind of help you, kind of counsel you on how to do that and make some permanent changes in your financial family budget so that you're better suited in the long run for whatever options that are going to be available to you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned next week for another edition of Mortgage Minute. In the meantime, I'm Art Alvarez at MortgageWorks, where we do have the answers and they're on the house. Take care.